Stop buying coffee for $5.50. You go to work, you spend $15 on a sandwich. What are you, an idiot? As far as I'm concerned, Elon Musk is a modern day Bruce Wayne.
Australian employees have the right to ignore their bosses outside working hours.
What happens if you have an event in the office and it's closed? Or you have an emergency somewhere and you have to get a hold of them at 2 in the morning because it affects the job they're working on and their mandate within the organization. This kind of stuff just makes me crazy. It's so dumb.
So recently I've had the displeasure of finding out who Kevin O'Leary is. Now, a lot of you Americans and of course Canadians, you know who this guy is. He ran to be Prime Minister of Canada. He's just a general businessman. Seems to have just promoted every business scam like cryptocurrency, and also seems to be a very popular talking head on Fox News. And you might have seen him recently for two things, basically saying that most people are poor because they buy coffee at work, and also going viral for disagreeing with Australia's, I forgot what the technical term is. Basically, once you have finished your working hours, your boss isn't allowed to contact you, which should just be a normal thing, but this guy basically thinks, it's the worst thing ever. Now, as we're going to watch through various TikToks this guy has made on his own page, I think he's such a good insight into the mind of capitalist businessmen and how just both out of touch but also evil they are, and how they think the economic system we've created is just the most amazing thing because it benefits people just like this. And this guy also recently became a citizen of the UAE.
I recently became an Emirati citizen. I was offered citizenship by the Emirates and I took it for a lot of reasons. But I would have to say that half the reason they did that is they love Shark Tank.
Which is just so funny to me because when you're a citizen of the UAE, you're basically just admitting you don't pay your fair share of taxes to your home country. He's also an Irish citizen, which makes sense. His father was Irish. But when you're an Irish citizen and a UAE citizen, you're basically just telling the world that you've done this for probably tax reasons because he was actually born in Canada. So what I want to do today is just react to various TikToks and just talk about how this guy, while being one of the few rich people who go on TV and say stuff like this, he basically is a voice for all the 1%. And people like this can only exist because of the system of exploitation we currently live in. And as he's going to say himself, he loves this system because poverty makes people work hard. And if they work hard, one day maybe they can become rich. And of course, that's a lie that has been sold to all of us for, 300 years since the invention of modern capitalism, that it's all down to you and anyone can enter the 1% if only they work hard enough and they don't spend their money on coffee at Starbucks during the work week. You basically save every penny, and who knows, maybe you'll grow up to be a successful businessman like Kevin O'Leary. And we all know, of course, that's not the way it works. But anyway, before we go any further, please check out my social media, mainly my Instagram, my personal and my travel Instagram. Also, check out my Patreon page if you want to support my work. Trying to build up as many $1 to $3 patrons as possible. Benefits include access to videos early and ad-free, and also access to the private patrons Discord server. With all of that out the way, let's get into the rest of the video. So Kevin O'Leary's advice to people to save money is so bad, even Ben Shapiro disagrees with it, but let's listen to what he says in one of his more viral TikToks.
Stop buying coffee for $5.50. You go to work, you spend $15 on a sandwich. What are you, an idiot? It costs you 99 cents to make a sandwich at home and bring it with you. You start to add that up every day, it's a ton of money. Most people, particularly working in metropolitan cities that are just starting out on their job, making their first $60,000, piss away about $15,000 a year on stupid stuff. And that's what they should stop doing, on stupid stuff. And that's what they should stop doing.
Okay, I mean, that's true. The truth is that for, I think, the vast majority of people, they're not going bankrupt because of the cup of coffee or because of the sandwich. The real reason that they're going bankrupt is because they're making big purchases that they cannot afford that have regular payments on them. A car, a house. I mean, get your finances in order.
So yeah, even Ben Shapiro disagreeing with that take. And it's just like the rhetoric of the ruling class to try and put the unequal economic system on the rest of us. Like, it's all your individual choices when it comes to daily consumption. So if you spend £5 every single day on a Starbucks coffee, if you spend, let's say, £10 on a coffee and a sandwich for your lunch, that's the reason you're either poor or that's the reason you're bankrupt. And I'm not saying that, of course, doesn't add up. When I used to like commute up London and work, I used to not do that every day, but then there are some days where you're like, I'm spending £14 to commute to work every day. What's another £5 to buy something nice for myself at lunch? Like, most people probably think that because you're spending extortionate amounts on public transport in the first place, thanks to privatisation of public transport across the UK. And in the grand scheme of things, although you might save money through making sandwiches at home, you're probably not going to affect too much. But also, pivoting away from Kevin O'Leary, I know he has a lot of real estate, right? And during the pandemic, of course, people stopped commuting and people stopped going to like cafes, Starbucks, Pret's in London because they weren't going to the office anymore, right? And also, lots of offices were shutting down and not re-upping their rent in commercial real estate because people weren't using it anymore, which caused the ruling class to absolutely freak out and beg the government to try and make it harder to work from home, right? Kevin O'Leary is part of the class who want people in the office spending disposable income on sandwiches and coffee to keep the commuter economy flowing for their benefit, right? And then they'll turn around and say also, yeah, but it's also your fault you're poor if you contribute to this economy we benefit from. And because you're back in the office, we're making more money from the commercial real estate and stuff. It's just funny. I bet there are landlords who pressure the government massively to make sure work from home didn't take off as much as it did, who would also believe the exact same shit as Kevin O'Leary there. You'd think that would be hypocritical, but they definitely would think this. So let's move on to another one. This exchange looks like he's trolling, and I think he's being deliberately provocative. I don't think everything he says is an outright lie, though. So let's listen to him basically be confronted with global wealth inequality.
Quickly, which is the combined wealth, this is according to Oxfam, of the world's 85 richest people is equal to the 3.5 billion poorest people.
It's fantastic. And this is a great thing because it inspires everybody, gets the motivation to look up to the 1% and say, I want to become one of those people. I'm going to fight hard to get up to the top. This is fantastic news, and of course I applaud it. What can be wrong with this?
Really?
Yes, really.
So somebody living on
I celebrate capitalism.
$1 a day in Africa is getting up in the morning and saying, I'm going to be Bill Gates.
That's the motivation everybody needs.
Only thing between me and
I'm
that
not
guy
against
is
charity.
motivation. I just need to pull up my socks.
I am not.
Wait, I don't have socks.
Look, don't tell me that you want to redistribute wealth again. That's never going to happen. Okay?
You know what? You take a simple stat like this, which is neither good nor bad. It's just a fact.
It's a celebratory stat. I'm very excited about it. I'm wonderful to see it happen. I tell kids every day, what's wrong with this?
Comes up at a cocktail party.
No, Amanda, what's wrong with this statement?
One possible response
if you work hard, you might be stinking rich.
We're talking about people in extreme abject poverty. That's how you get 3.5 billion.
No, we're not. You were just talking about really rich people.
No. Okay. I'm going to tell you later what you should say to this.
So yeah, I would say the stuff about like celebrating the fact that 3.5 billion people have the same wealth as 85 people, 85 of the wealthiest people. Maybe he's just trying to get a reaction out of this woman, but he clearly believes this stuff. Like, he clearly believes that having like a lot of rich people is a good incentive to the rest of us to aspire to join the 1%. And it's good to see this poverty around us as a motivator. I've seen him say other stuff like similar to this before, but that is how a lot of them think, because a lot of them obviously don't take into account they come from money in the first place, or have had even just certain opportunities growing up in the global north. They're literally saying to someone who is like maybe some rural farmer in, let's say, like sub-Saharan Africa, some of the poorest countries on earth, or Central Asia, some of the poorest countries on earth located there as well. They genuinely believe someone in that situation could potentially become as successful as them, because they think capitalism is this equal playing field. It's a meritocracy, and all you really have to do is work hard to have your chance. And if you fail, it's pretty much like completely down to your own inaction and inadequacies rather than anything wrong with the global economic system. And also, it feels like he's admitting there that, yeah, having a wealthy 1% does result in this massive wealth inequality, because to have that wealthy 1%, you need to have like global exploitation on an absolute insane massive scale, which keeps the rest of us poor, right? So you can't have everyone in the world being rich, of course, because we can't sustain that quality of life for people or that excessive consumer capitalist lifestyle. So there's always going to be winners and losers in capitalism. It just so happens that to have a certain number of winners, you have to have far, far, far more losers in the economic system. So let's move on to another one. This is the one that was going viral recently. He was on a Fox News panel, and they were talking about Australia's new law about employees being able to ignore their bosses.
Australian employees have the right to ignore their bosses outside working hours.
What happens if you have an event in the office and it's closed? Or you have an emergency somewhere and you have to get a hold of them at 2 in the morning because it affects the job they're working on and their mandate within the organization. This kind of stuff just makes me crazy. It's so dumb. Who dreams this crap up is my question. And why would anybody propose such a stupid idea?
Do you ever get from any of your employees that I'm in silent mode that a lot of young people put on their phones?
The next moment is I just fire them.
So obviously on the surface, most people would say like you're a terrible person because you're contracted for a certain number of hours. Your boss should not be contacting you after that about something work-related because they don't pay you for it, right? If you're not on the clock, why would you answer their messages about work? Now, the only thing I will say here, it's not in defense of him, because he's in such an insane, like, elite financial bubble. I do know, like, friends of friends who work in, like, finance and work in, like, hedge funds and stuff. And, yeah, you're expected to be available 24/7 because they pay you so much money, right? And that's kind of the life you sign up for there is, yeah, you're going to take this position, but work is going to become your life. So in this guy's bubble, he's probably thinking about the entire world like this. Like, what if I have an issue with my hedge fund? I need to contact the people working on it. But obviously this mindset applies to everyone. Like, this guy thinks, oh yeah, if your boss at McDonald's has some sort of issue, they should be able to ring you up at like 2 a.m. to talk about it. Again, like, this law is great for people because everyone knows bosses already abuse their power. They already like control so much of your life in the workplace. So you need some sort of legal backing to make sure they can't contact you outside of the workplace and have even more power and control in your life. But people like Kevin O'Leary basically think if you work for him, and most capitalists think this, you're basically their slave because they've done you a favor. They've given you a job. Without them, you wouldn't have a job. And aren't they just so benevolent? And when I actually quit my last job, like my last job before YouTube, I actually fucking had this argument with my boss where she said I should be grateful for having a job. And I had to explain to her that I make her money, which seemed to shock her. But they actually think this. And if you don't think most capitalists and bosses think this, you've never had an honest conversation with them and seen their real face. Because most people like this, they just feel entitled to your time because they've done you a favor. They've given you that job. So after hearing this guy speak in a few TikToks, would it surprise you at all? He also loves Elon Musk. So let's listen to him articulate why he loves Elon Musk, and one of his sons also works for Tesla. So maybe that could factor into it. But here he is on a few more interviews on Fox talking about this.
As far as I'm concerned, Elon Musk is a modern day Bruce Wayne. I mean, this guy has been so successful in so many sectors, so I'm a huge fan. And what I really love about him is his executional skills. But he's also got another trait which I find very endearing, and you may or may not like this. He's a real poo-poo disturber, if you know what I mean. He just doesn't give a poo-poo. And I love that about him. He doesn't care what country, what dictator, what leader, what judiciary. If they don't want his technology over the Amazon, where they need high-speed internet, he's happy to shut it off. He doesn't care. If he doesn't get free speech, which is why he paid $42 billion for Twitter in the beginning, he owns it. He controls it. It's private. He can do whatever he likes.
But at one point, Elon Musk said that he would work in a Trump White House.
You know, I have to disclose something. I am a huge fan of Elon Musk.
Yeah.
And for full disclosure, my son works for him and loves his job at Tesla.
And I think that guy is a modern-day Bruce Wayne. If he got involved with government, it would be a good thing for everybody in America. The guy's a no BS guy. He's very transparent, and he really knows what he's doing. He has executional skills. You may not like him. You may not like his communication styles, but look at what he's accomplished. If we could get more Elon Musk into government, this country would not be in the situation it's in, divided so much.
So two things there, like nightmare fuel, thinking about Elon Musk being in a government and talking about like his execution style. He's just so erratic. How he's managed Twitter shows like no core beliefs. He basically, if you remember when he first bought it, he would change stuff, then change it back based on how much his far-right conservative fans liked stuff. Like he would propose to like remove likes from tweets, right? And actually say he's going to go through with it, only to get a massive backlash and then back down. Then he'd like fire most of the staff. The site would run like absolute garbage, and it still does. Like it still go on sometimes. It like barely works. So it's just, obviously he lives in this bubble. Everyone has a circle jerk about Elon, this myth of Elon, calling him like one day Bruce Wayne. Doesn't Bruce Wayne do like a lot of good charity work and is driven by some sort of morals? And also Bruce Wayne is like super intelligent. Elon Musk is exposed to everyone. He's just a fucking dumbass. But also he's talking about like, oh, if you don't comply with free speech, he's happy. He doesn't care what politics you are. He's going to take his like technology away from you if you don't agree with his, Twitter free speech crusade. Obviously referencing the Brazil stuff. But he's perfectly happy to comply with censorship when the Indian government asks him to do it. Because obviously, I don't even think this O'Leary guy even knows much about Elon Musk, to be honest. But even if he did know what I was saying, he obviously doesn't care. And I'd imagine he probably has business dealings with Elon Musk anyway. There's obviously the fact that his son works for Tesla. So now let's talk about some more stuff. So recently, the US government and obviously the Harris campaign have been talking about like price controls and tax increases on the wealthy and stuff like that. Like the usual campaign promises you might hear from Democrats. So let's listen to O'Leary's take on this.
What do you think the American people want to hear? Which one is going to work?
That's not going to happen. The government's not going to control pricings on protein or groceries or energy. It's been tried before in countries like the Soviet Union, North Korea, Cuba. Doesn't work.
What are people on the street saying about Kamala telling everybody that she is going to decide how much a steak costs in Albuquerque?
Over the last 48 hours, what we've learned is the potential to take corporate taxes from 23 to 28%. That's a 21.7% increase that takes America's competitiveness in the G20 down to almost the bottom quartile. I'm sorry, I don't want to be partisan. That's bad policy, whoever puts it out there. So I don't want to be pegged to be pro or con Harris or Trump. I'm telling you, I smell good and bad policy. Number two, price fixing. We tried that in the 70s. That's beyond crazy. Can you imagine America where there's a ministry of pricing for groceries that tells a farmer what an apple can be sold for and what you can buy it for? I mean, that is a horror film on Netflix no one's even written the script for. That's not America. There's no chance in hell that's going to happen.
I just wonder, like, what bizarro world you have to live in to think about price regulation on, like, the basic necessities of life is actually, like, a bad thing. Like, if you said you can't charge a certain amount for, like, a loaf of bread, you can't charge an extortionate amount, you can't raise the prices every year by a certain amount. Why is that a bad thing? I don't understand. When it comes to like the basic necessities that everyone has, that sounds like a good thing. But obviously this guy is bringing out the old like anti-communist stuff about price regulation. And they do this for like stuff like pharmaceuticals. And the way he framed it about like corporate tax rates, he's talking about the competitiveness. So these people believe like hypocritically two things at once. They believe in some sort of free market where competition drives prices, but they also believe in massive corporations being in bed with the US government, which actually completely erodes the free market as well. If we're talking about pharmaceutical companies, there's a few in bed with the US government that get away with price gouging because they're in bed with the US government. It's the same with food companies as well. There isn't really a free market on a massive scale, but in food, I guess you might have some sort of free market with America's like million different brands. But when everyone can feel it right now about grocery prices increasing, like I feel this all the time, went shopping this week, and then suddenly nearly everything I buy for my regular shop has gone up between 10 and 50p. But it also did that like 3 months ago as well. And you just have to take it, right? And I'm talking about things like bread. I'm talking about things like cucumbers, peppers, vegetables. And what is to stop these supermarkets, let's say in the UK, from continually increasing the prices with no justification? I'll admit that obviously there might be a reason why they've done this in the first place, but when you're seeing it like increase again and again, where it's like maybe 50% more expensive than a year ago, then yeah, price regulation would be good, especially because the US government, in the US's case, wastes so much fucking money subsidizing the farming industry to keep it globally competitive, because massive food companies and farming corps are totally in bed with the US government, right? So that's totally fine. Prop up big business to a massive cost to the taxpayer, but price regulation of basic necessities is actually bad because of communism. So I got one more for you.
The economy itself is bipartisan. There are as many Democrats that want jobs as there are Republicans. Those are my people. I don't care what your politics are when I'm investing in you. I couldn't give a shit. I just want to know, can you execute? And I don't care what party you support or what your gender is or what your whole... Can you execute in building a business? I have every gender under the sun working with me, and every party working with me, and they know that I don't have a partisan bone in my body, but I do have a policy bone in my body.
So do I believe this guy actually doesn't care about things like gender, maybe LGBT rights, as long as the business is good? I mean, I find it hard to believe that he doesn't care. I've seen other videos where he's complaining about like wokeness and DEI and stuff like that. At the same time, I think it's a good video at showing that, yeah, capitalists don't really care about like conventional electoral politics and even social issues if the money keeps flowing, because capitalists primarily, their politics is money. And if companies like Starbucks have to put rainbow flags on all their branding in June in America, but they don't have to do it in like, you know, Saudi Arabia or something, that's totally fine. They will do that to make as much money as possible. And that is also pretty much why these capitalists will fund the Democrats and Republicans. Although they differ on religious issues, gender issues, LGBT issues, they both promise to serve the capitalist class. So these capitalists are making money no matter who's in charge, and they don't really give a shit. Like Donald Trump wins the next election, Kamala Harris wins the next election. They honestly don't really care. Like certain interests, like oil interests, they want Trump to win because he's promising to help deregulate the oil industry. But by and large, especially people involved in like financial services, they don't care too much. Of course, they prefer Trump just because they think he'd deregulate more, but they don't really mind. But what you also see is capitalists will always side with fascists. When Germany went fascist in the 1930s, most of the leading businessmen funded the rise of the fascists and obviously were given nice, sweet contracts by the new fascist government. And when fascism fell, oh, well, they got right into bed with the West German government afterwards because they didn't give a shit. They were happy to side with anyone who would make them rich. I wouldn't call it being apolitical, but yeah, a lot of capitalists like really don't give a shit about this stuff as long as the money's good. So that's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed looking at Kevin O'Leary as a case study of just horrible capitalist businessmen. But what I will say is this guy's pretty prolific on right-wing media, but pretty much like 99% of rich people think exactly like this guy. So please think of this when you're dealing with people in management or bosses. But also something to remember is you will never be as rich as these people if you're not as immoral as these people. And also just don't buy the BS they're selling you about why like price regulation of groceries is bad. And it's actually your fault that you're poor because you bought coffees at work and stuff. So that is it for the video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.